guys, welcome to Podcast Fandom Premium. I'm your host, Nina.
I'm Donald.
And I'm Kaylee.
And we are back to discuss Extraordinary Attorney Woo. 인상한 변호사 우영우. And we're going to be talking about episodes...
There it came.
I'm going to punch you right in the face.
Continue.
We're going to be talking about episodes 5 and 6. Episode 5 is called Wildcard versus Tactician. And episode 6 is If I Were a Whale. I'm going to punch you right in the nose. 내가 고래였으면, I think is how you say that in Korean. So this is going to be a really quick podcast. Oh my fucking God. If you don't get your shit together, stop sneezing on my podcast. This is going to be fairly quick because Kaylee don't know how to act. The dog is eating a treat, but that'll be gone soon, and then he won't know how to act. But also, I feel like the long discussions for this show come when the cases, like we talk about the cases and like the personal stuff, and in my opinion, like this first case in episode 5 is not really a lot to talk about. Do you remember, guys, what it was?
It's not sneezing.
I only remember one episode.
I'm trying to, because I know we stopped. For some reason, I thought we only were...
From now on, we are recording after we watch shit, because I can't with these two.
I'm trying to remember, because I thought we were only doing one episode, because I thought we stopped it because you said the two-parter was coming up.
No, the next...
Two, right?
The next one is 2, yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I thought you only
there are
watched one episode.
two-parters, so 4 episodes coming up are a part of a two-parter. So, and then the next 2 that we're going to watch are a two-part. But, okay, so the first one was the ATM case.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Okay, that's where she teamed up with... So each
she
episode...
was working with Kwan.
Right, and then the second episode, she worked with...
Choi.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. It's kind of like a test.
So, y'all ready to talk about him?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, episode 5, Wildcard versus Tactician. The title comes from the nicknames that both Woo Young-woo and Attorney Kwan were given in law school. He's a bit of a tactician, which feels like a nice way of saying that he's conniving and plotting. Mm-hmm. And she's a wild card, and I think that's just because her brain is so much better than everybody else's. She keeps coming up with these kind of unconventional ways to present and try and win their cases. So the Honest Cassette, that is the name of the feature that these ATM manufacturers are saying is special to their ATMs. And what it is that you can... the problem they were having was bank tellers were loading ATM cassettes with cash, and if they said they put in 100,000 won but only put in 90,000 won, there's no way for the machine to tell. Right. So there's this cassette that you stack the cash in that can tell what the weight of the bills,
yeah.
Right, to show if it matches what was manually put in, to say this is what we're depositing in this cassette. And so the main case revolves around the company that hires Hanbada. I was about to say Danban from Itaewon Class. Hanbada law firm. They are issuing I'm trying to how to put it. They're issuing a cease and desist from another ATM manufacturer saying they're using their technology. The other ATM manufacturer, led by this old dude, they're saying, no, all of us, that this isn't a proprietary thing, this cassette, because the Americans, apparently there's some sort of convention every year in Chicago for banking, I don't know, banking I don't know, ATMs,
sure
banks, yeah, it sounds right. And so they were saying, no, the Americans came up with this technology and they didn't patent it. It's like open source so that other people can use it, which I was like, that doesn't sound like Americans. But so he was like, a lot of us came back into, but what this guy is doing is saying, he's trying to say that he came up with it and patented it in Korea so that no other Korean manufacturers can use it. So that is their issue. And at the heart of it is that there was ATMs in the marketplace that was using this honest cassette before this guy is saying that he created it.
Right.
And so the old dude has, and his company have been trying to find those old ATMs to show, no, this was a cassette being used way before he's claiming they came up with it. So that's like the heart of the case. And the personal aspect of it is Kwon and Woo are paired up to work on it, but he doesn't even tell her.
Yep, he's like, he sees it as competition.
Right.
That he wants to be
why
the
is it a
number
competition?
one.
Do you remember?
Because not all of them would, they have a year contract.
Yes. So they're new hires, and it's
Right.
like basically a probationary year. It's almost like being an intern, except they're paid. And it's like, there's no guarantee that they're all going to work there after the year is up.
It's interesting, though, if you think about, like, because here it is, 2022, and you see they're talking about this, hey, we're developing this thing. I forgot when they said it was developed, but it was developed, like, in the 2000s.
Early 2000s, yeah.
But
I feel like.
ATMs have been around since, the 90s? Or, hell, I don't know if I don't think they've been around the 80s. Have they been around?
I think so.
But
like
if that's truly been an issue
Nico, stop.
for 20 plus years, I just wonder if that really happened. Like, if there was people that were in the banking industry or whatever that was skimming that shit. And
of course. Listen.
Or just now rich, living out in the fucking Hollywood Hills. And
Listen. If there's a way to fuck a system, somebody has figured it out and tried it and did it until they got caught. You know what I'm saying? Any process that's been put into production, the people early involved, if one person was like, but wait a minute, if I put $300 in my pocket,
Nico.
but say I put $300 in the machine, how they gonna know? That person did it, and they kept doing it until somebody was like, hey, wait a minute. Nico, if you don't stop. So, I'm making it hard for him to like get over here and be a pain in my ass. So, and the first way that this comes into this competition and fucks her over is that he didn't even tell her about the case, and he prepped for it. So he read all of that shit that I just explained. Like Kwon read all on that. Right. So when they went to meet with the client,
he was like, oh yeah, you're on this case, here's all the books, we're gonna go meet the client right now.
And she had to walk down the hallway carrying these piles of stacks of papers and books and stuff. And I hated this scene so much because
it made her look stupid.
Not that, just that, but like it made her, they like, without realizing it, were like isolating her. And there was like stuff in there that doesn't even have anything to do with her being autistic, even just being a woman. Like
right.
in Korea,
yeah.
the men all have to serve military service by a certain age. And so the client is a man, Kwon and the boss, Myung-suk, are men, and they were able to kind of like bond over that. Okay, sorry, we had to put the dog in a timeout. But like I was saying, that's not her fault or their fault, but I do think it's something that men should be mindful of in the workplace. Yeah, like to just be like, saluting each other and like bonding, and then she's just like to even not even acknowledge. Like there's a way that you could have incorporated her in that conversation, saying like, oh, you're lucky you know nothing about that, or just something, you know. But like it just. And of course, I didn't expect Kwon to do it because he was like, I'm sure was aware that she was being iced
But
out.
then even just what he was doing was making even it worse, that she was incompetent. And
yeah, he
the
was
boss,
like
I
later,
like,
yeah.
Even here, like the boss would turn to her and ask her
a
question or something like that, and she couldn't answer it.
Because, when they started talking about it, the client mentioned the cassette, and the boss, who's just there to observe, right? Like they were responsible for reading the material. He looks at her and he goes, "What's a cassette?" And she was like, "Oh."
Yes, and then
where she has some.
Right, so then when that was the whole thing,
and
just made her look incompetent. Right, because he was like, this woman doesn't know what she's doing. Why would I take her business off?
Well, she was the only one who didn't like the drink that they had.
Yeah. Yeah. I did like, though, that Junho was in the room because he had brought some stuff for them, and he saw that she was having trouble opening the bottle, and he opened it for her. Yeah, before he left, and he kind of side-eyed them on the way out the room. He was like, what the fuck is this?
I love him.
Speaking of nicknames, in this, if you don't put that away, in this episode, they, oh my god, Sooyoung, is that her first name? Sooyoung, I think Sooyoung. I hope that's right. She's having lunch with Woo, and she's like, there's so many similar names in these K-dramas, I'm messing them all up. And she goes, give me a nickname. And she was like, pretty girl, Sooyoung. And she's like coming up with all these like flattering things. And Woo was like, no, that's not you. And she was like, well, fine, what am I then? And she called her Sunshine Sooyoung. And she was like, what? And then like
she went into a brief description.
Yeah, she was like, you always open, like and so I knew the scene was coming up, and it made me cry the first time I saw it. And because I knew it was coming up, I was watching before this, like not even just in this episode. In another episode, she was having trouble opening her water bottle, and Sooyoung just took it from her while she was talking to her, opened it, and handed it back. Like, and I didn't notice that the first time I watched, but then after, when this scene came up, when I was watching it with y'all, I was like noticing when she does it, and I was wondering if y'all noticed, because I was like, that it was a really nice thing.
It sounded like she was also saying that she did this when they went to
yes,
together.
yes.
So
she says when they were in law school, she tried to stop other people from making fun of her, and she said, you were the only one who would tell me, like, if class was canceled or if something changed, you made sure I knew what was going on.
So it just makes me wonder, like, why she was came off as a bitch in the beginning of the series by not helping her in certain situations, but then also kind of like, because the other guy didn't know her at all, but I felt like she kind of told him how she, because he would be like the revolving door, like, no, like, and it was kind of, he was learning off of her, and I felt like that kind of,
like how to treat her, or
right, and that's why he is kind of the way he is now with her in a way, but now she's flipped back to, sounds like the way she was in school, where she's like, they're like good friends. It's just weird.
I don't know. You were going to say something, Kaylee, I thought, about that.
But maybe it has something to do with the fact that she just likes this guy. I mean, I was going to say that, but like, she doesn't know that he likes...
Yeah, I don't think it's about Junho. I think it is just...
Maybe that she's like, we're in a more professional setting now. Yes.
And I think it's her getting to know her too. Like,
I think that definitely the episode with them singing to the other autistic kid.
Yeah.
That was where she turned for me, because she actually rapped with them.
Yeah,
and that seemed to, they connected in that episode to me. And ever since then, they've been closer.
But see, here's the thing. I think what's kind of beautiful about the character is that she's not it's not necessarily like a flip. I have a feeling she was always nice to her. Like she says, you were nice to me in law school. But I think here, she has a very natural, I think, it's not pretty, but a kind of natural, I think, misunderstanding. Like, she was frustrated with Wu. Like, we're at work now. Why can't you just stop? Like, if you notice, the first time she kind of did that was in that very first meeting when Wu introduced herself. And you could tell she wanted to do the whole kayak tomato race car thing. And she was considering it. And then Sooyoung looked at her and was like... And then that's when you get, they know each other. Because she knew that was like a compulsion. And she was just like, don't do that here. So, and then the thing with the door, it was like, it's almost like, I think when you hear about siblings who have like a disabled sibling, and it's like, you love them and you understand, but you also can get frustrated. You know what I mean? Like, why can't you just be different? Why can't you just behave? So I think she
forcing
had
them
those
to be independent.
Yeah, like in a way, yes. And so it came off. That's just the way I took it. So it's less like a flip and more like this is, I think, how, if we're honest, probably a lot of people are, where sometimes you may forget or you may find yourself frustrated with the kind of habits or tics of an autistic person, and you don't always approach it the best way. So at some point, Wu starts to suspect that their clients are lying. And one of the questions was, when they go to meet them, she was like, what caused you to invent this? Because that is a big thing. When you have people claiming, arguing over a patent, one of the things is, okay, but why did you come up with it? And it's usually the person who didn't copy it has a story, right? Like, oh, I noticed there was a need for this, or, I live with somebody who was disabled and I thought, oh, I should invent this, like that. And they had no such story. And it contrasts, I don't know if you caught this, but Quan went and met with someone who worked for the company that was using the machines a long time ago, and they were looking for them, right? But they had all been like decommissioned.
Right.
When Quan interviewed that guy, remember he got all choked up, and he was like, why? He goes, because we put a lot into like coming up with that and so many long hours. And so you see the contrast, like this is somebody who actually did work on something from scratch, as opposed to their client who was just like, huh? So there's a whole kind of subplot of her explaining and us learning that autistic people are easy to trick, because for a lot of them, a lot of times they take everything you say at face value. And I've seen threads about this on Twitter where like,
that's the whole reason why tone tags exist now on the internet.
Who?
Tone tags.
I don't know what a tone tag is.
You ever see a tweet and it has like /J at the end of it, or like /POS? You never seen that? It's
No.
Like, it's called tone tag, tone indicators. It's so people know the tone of your message.
Oh,
'Cause
okay.
It's hard to tell. Or like people will put /S if it's sarcasm, /J if it's a joke. /POS means positive, so it's meant with a positive connotation.
I did not know that.
This generation.
Yeah, it's become widely popular on the internet these days.
I'm too old.
It's people.
That's amazing.
That's why I can't tweet.
I think that's amazing though. Yeah. People are learning to be a bit more considerate and kind of think about the world differently. And I love that.
So next time you see it, you'll know. Or when you do see it, you'll know.
All my tweets are going to be like /IMTS. I mean this shit. ISWIS. I said what I said.
Mom is creating all new ones.
Right. Like, there's like an existing list of all
Don't
of them.
tag. No, I have my new / if you know, you know. Well, I'm going to use that when I'm passive aggressive tweeting. So anyway, because of that, there's a fun scene with her and Gurami where she's like trying to tell her, she gets like a bunch of like different advice throughout the episode on how to tell somebody's lying, and Gurami is like, look them in the eyes, and she's like, for an autistic person that's really hard to do. She's like, okay, well, stare right here between the eyes. And then Junho tells her that he used to work with an ex-detective who said that people, the further the lie is away from your brain, like body-wise, it's like, you can't look at the face because the face is close to the brain, so it is like in tune with the lie, so it's going to match the lie. But the further away, like your hands, so sweaty hands and rubbing, or your body language, or tapping your feet. And I just love that explanation. But we also learned that the whole thing about Pinocchio is actually based on...
I knew this.
I didn't know that. Like, supposedly when you lie...
Your nose gets a little itchy.
You're right. Because, like, what is it? Blood rushes, like, to your nose, and it...
I don't remember the exact reasoning, but yeah.
So it's just funny that they had the one guy who was clearly lying, but he also used to be an actor. And then because she wants to be like Quan, this was really fucked up. She basically tells him, listen, this isn't like, this is a civil case. Like, even if you get up there and lie, it's not like you can't, it's not perjury. Like you can't get convicted for this. And this is how you need to act, like to really sell whatever it is you're saying. And you can see Junho looking at her like, this ain't you. But she's doing that because Kwon had called and the guy put it on speakerphone. And he was bonding with the client again and all of that. There was a scene where she was at her dad's kimbap restaurant and there was a rude customer who came in. She walked in the door talking shit. Why is your kimbap so expensive? I guess I'll eat here. It's like, okay, lady. And she goes to sit down. And the dad said, thank you. Like, he said something nice to her. Mm-hmm. And Wu was like, and she pulls out the little gavel and she goes, you think that customer is rude, true or false? And the lady is like, did you use your daughter to insult me? And he's like, this ain't my daughter. He's like, please leave, ma'am. And she was like, 죄송합니다. Okay.
She got the message.
Yes. But I did like to, when she's talking to Junho, she talks about how, she explains how people with autism are easy to trick. And I like that he says, I'm happy you told me this because it helps me understand you. I was like, oh, he's so sweet. I'm just going through my notes. Okay, so at the end of it, the old man sends her a letter, which is basically like, you know your client is a liar. And is this the kind of attorney you want to be? And I just thought that was so interesting because he didn't send that letter to Kwon. Mm-mm. He was like, you a piece of shit and I recognize it. But you have potential to be better. And I thought it was interesting when their client gives her a photo of a dandelion because it's supposed to represent like...
Is it a dandelion?
Sunflower.
Sunflower, yeah.
Like it means like wealth or something, like to get money. And so he literally is so on the nose, but he takes down the code of ethics that as a lawyer that she swore to, he takes it down off the wall to put up this thing that represents money. And later in the episode, she framed the letter the man sent her about what type of attorney you want to be.
Did you notice that when she went to, he's in Kwon?
The park, yeah.
Yeah, she went to his office and he also
had it.
He sunflower just hanging up on his wall.
Yes.
Money.
But as it turns out, that they were lying and they were busted because the old man did eventually find one of those machines and they opened it up and it was the same cassette and it's dated way before.
But it
didn't matter
right, because he didn't care about this case at all. He was
the
prolonging.
cease and desist was so that they could not sell their ATMs to banks.
Right, so he could close his deals.
Yes, to get all the deals.
Yep, and he got them all done while the case was going on.
And I mean, that's the thing with this show. It's like, that was a hard lesson for her to learn. Mm-hmm. Oh, and they ended up. Oh no, that's the next episode. Okay, so let's talk about the next episode. The next episode is If I Were a Whale, and I swear to God, this episode should win awards. Because this was a really good one. So there's a North Korean defector who is leaving her daughter at the beginning of the episode at an orphanage. And it's a public interest case, which I think in Korea what they mean is this is like a pro bono. Like, if you think about it, the reason I think this happens, I could be wrong, but when you have big law firms like this, I think it's kind of like companies that donate to charity for tax purposes. Mm-hmm. I think law firms take on a certain number of free cases that normally people wouldn't be able to afford this type of lawyer. And I think what it's supposed to do is kind of like bring balance to your society so that, do you get what I'm saying?
And the publicity of it too.
I think the way this is sold, I think, in society, even here, is that, everybody is, like, you have public defenders, like, who really don't make a lot of money, and that's all they do, is that they are taking on public defender cases, like when poor people are in court and they don't, the court assigns them a lawyer. But the fact that these big companies that don't have to do it, I think I think they sell it as it helps to bring balance to society, so that even the poorest of you could have an opportunity to be represented by. But yeah, it's probably just publicity. Anyway, so her story is she defected from North Korea, and the woman who, because a lot of, I don't know if you guys know, when people defect, they don't, like you would think, because they're right there next to each other, they don't go from North Korea into South Korea. Like, that's the hard way to do it. A lot of times they go to China, and then they have to be smuggled into South Korea from China. And the people who organize this charge money, like in Squid Game, Ali, in this case, the woman who she was owed money, and the woman who owed her the money was like, if you go get this debt that I am owed from this other woman, you could keep the money. Mm-hmm. So she sent her and another North Korean defector to get this money. And right. The woman that they had to collect the money from was being abused by her husband. Right. And they kind of tussled with her a little bit. But this was after her husband had beat her. So by the time the cops were called, it looked like they had really beat the shit out of this woman. But
we didn't know this at first. We just go there, but you see the woman's face all beat up.
Right. But we knew that they didn't do that.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Right. We knew that they didn't do all that.
We just didn't know how she got this.
Right. And as it turns out, so they got arrested, and one of the girls did her 4 years in prison, but she ran. And she's been kind of living off the radar. I think she said she was working in a motel, like cleaning rooms, and that came with a room that she could live in. And her daughter just lived in that room with her the whole time. But the reason she did that was because she was okay going to jail. She just didn't want to go to jail at the time of the crime 5 years ago because her daughter was really young. And she was like, she won't remember me. Right. So she wanted to raise her for a while so she'd get to an age where she would remember. Which, of course, makes the goodbye even harder, though. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because she didn't know.
Right. So at some point in this episode, Hwan gets it into his head that Junho likes Soo-young. Because they're drinking one night at home, and he says, I can't remember what he says exactly, but it's like he likes somebody on the litigation team. Yeah. And when he says, well, it can't be Woo, it pissed off June. He's like, just go to sleep. He's like, what do I say? They're drunk and they pass out. In the course of this case, they end up putting a doctor on the stand who at the time had said that the woman's injuries came from these two girls attacking her. Yeah. And then later, like after that case, like he wrote a public opinion piece for a newspaper, and it's clear he's biased against North Koreans. Mm-hmm. And so they put him on the stand, and they basically let him hang himself.
Right.
He just kept talking. Like at one point it was over, and he was like, but like, why should we treat North Koreans with respect? I was like, Jesus Christ.
And you can see it on the faces of the jury.
Yeah, they were like, what? How's that supposed to mean? And that's just so interesting that like people in Korea, because I'm sure this is a thing. Mm-hmm. But it's weird because I don't know, not like I know a lot of Koreans, and I'm talking about native Koreans, but like the native Koreans I know, plus the Korean Americans I know, I never hear them talk shitty about North Korea. In fact, I know people who have family in North Korea, and you forget that they were forcefully separated. And that the country, or the two countries, have sought reunification over the years. But guess who doesn't allow it?
North Korea?
No.
South Korea?
No. The United States.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Why is that our business?
Well, that's a whole other discussion. I mean, there's a lot of Koreans who question why the fuck are we in there. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know. For instance, like our military, like Korean military planes, those are our planes. They train them, and you know, there are some, I don't want to speak out of turn, but there are some who basically are like, the Korean government is just basically, the Korean military is just an extension of the American military. Like, they're not going to make a move without the US's approval and input. And so, the US has a thing against communism and people of color in general. And so they're just really not trying to have these Koreans get united. The US likes people divided. That's all I will say. So, but what happens though, what happened with this war and this forced split is that you have people alive now that have relatives that are in North Korea that they don't know if they're alive or dead.
Right.
They don't speak to them. They can't go visit them. They can't visit, you know, so.
Did you know that right here, next to the movie theater, there's a Korean War memorial?
No, I didn't know that.
It's everybody says it's a really nice memorial, a nice park.
You should go check it out. So, but they end up losing that a client over it because that doctor was like a part of this like medical organization that hired Hanbada to represent them and stuff, and because they made him, because he outed himself as a bigot on the thing on the stand, they took their business away from Hanbada. So that other attorney, the cute guy, he's in Beyond Evil. What's the name of the one I watched? Yeah. Anyway, yeah, he yells at Myung-suk in front of
everybody in the cafeteria. He's like, I'm gonna leave now because I'm embarrassed. Yes. Like, that's understandable.
But the way he handled that was like a G, because because they apologized. They were like, we're so sorry, we should have did our research before we went so hard on him on the stand. And he was like, you're rookie attorneys, it's on me, blah, blah, blah. Like, he was so sweet. And then he walks away with his head held high, and they were both like, wow. Like, oh, and this is the case I forgot to mention. Myung-suk put Woo on this case with Choi because he felt like she was getting too passionate and too attached to the client, the North Korean the defector. And so he told Woo, you need to go, when she starts getting, calm her down. Whoa, 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 whoa. So she went to her, she was like, whoa, whoa. But then she met the woman and she heard her story about the daughter and stuff, and then they both go back to him and they're like, we want to represent her vehemently and passionately, and we need to, like, she should not go to jail. And he's like, what happened to whoa, whoa? Now, this was interesting because one of the things they tried was to say that, and now
she didn't take the money, so she never got any money.
So right, so they tried that there was no robbery because she never got money.
Right.
And then the other angle they tried was, and I've heard from Korean friends who said that this is huge, because again, when I said who's been against reunification, Donnie's first North Korea, right? Because they have a negative reputation by design. But what's interesting is, I don't know if you guys caught this, North Korean law is actually more lenient than South Korean law. And that's why they tried that tactic. Right. And they were saying, but she doesn't understand South Korea. Right. But the judge was almost going to let that fly.
If she would have
just lied. Yeah. She didn't.
She told the whole truth.
She was like, look, I don't know. But the only thing I didn't like about that was she made her lawyers look dumb. Yeah. They made them look like liars. I was like, God damn it, girl. Oh, and this was the case where, because I forget what she was doing in the beginning, but like the attorney, yes. So this is the one where the attorney, we talked about this. He's big on like family names, like, oh, where are you from? Yes. And we talked. I was explaining how people in Korea, like, the families are registered, right? Mm-hmm. And so he started to show favoritism to the one judge, and then Choi was like, oh, you might know my dad. He's like, a judge too,
right? He's like that big judge.
Yeah. He was like, oh, so then everything they said, he just kept like agreeing and letting them get away with
it. Off the other attorney.
Yes. But at one point, Woo was getting on his nerves, so he was like, and now, from now on in my court, you have to raise your hand.
So the whole episode, everybody didn't.
But then when
it was out of court.
Yeah. Yes. When she was in his office, she came running behind him, holding up her hand. But then when their boss was there at the table and he started to speak,
he goes, no, raise your hand.
You have to raise your hand in this corner. But yeah, so they use, and I felt bad because Wu didn't tell her this is what they were doing. She just ran out and Choi had to follow her. And they go into the judge's chambers, which is highly, you're not supposed to do this shit at all. Mm-hmm. And we're like pleading their case. And he was just like, if you don't get the fuck out of here, we could all get in trouble for this shit. Get out of here.
But they basically tell him.
But he did.
Right, well, they tell him like who she is and why
yes.
she did it and stuff like that.
Yes.
See, the sympathy. So they were just trying to get him to sympathize
mm-hmm.
on her, and it ended up working. So
but it's not just that it worked. I'm trying to remember what it was. He gave her probation based on, like, not just out his ass.
Right.
But, like, it was something they hadn't thought of.
Because she turned herself in.
Because she turned herself in.
Yes.
That's it. Because she turned
and
herself
in.
God, did you just look at
I was thinking about that the entire time.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's my favorite word to come
Yeah.
So this is the episode also that the boss gets in trouble, right? Like, was this the episode or was it the one before this that they fucked up with the client?
See how he is? Do you see?
I don't know what you're talking about yet.
Go ahead.
The boss gets in trouble.
Why?
For what?
Because they basically fucked over one of their clients.
Yes. See how he is? We talked about that in detail. Do you see how he is? What are you over there doing?
Wait, was that this episode?
Yes.
Well, I'm in my own head the whole time.
You even agreed with me when I brought it up.
Okay.
The doctor, because it was like the board that he's on, or some sort of like union of doctors or some shit. That's doctor. The client, got right? It. He does this with me and John too. Me and John we'll talk about a whole.
You guys might have been talking the whole time. I'm thinking, I'm just my head. I'm just like I'm trying to remember that part.
Video games, sports. I don't know what he's over there doing. And then John and I would have a whole conversation. And at the end of the, Donnie be like, "Oh, we didn't talk about." And me and John be like, "Yeah,
but
we did."
But sitting next to you guys, I haven't been doing anything, but my head, I'm just trying to think of that, and I probably you guys were talking about it, but I'm thinking about something else.
Okay. But yeah, this whole thing, like her getting probation and being able, like, with the judge, like, this is probably my second favorite episode.
What was your first favorite? Did we watch it yet?
4. Was it 4? Where they went, the brothers, with us, Gurami, her dad and his 2 brothers, yeah, so far. And then at the end, our little stinger scene is her going shopping. She's at the mall with Soo-young. And they show this a lot of times where, like, people forget that she doesn't like to be touched. Mm-hmm. And Soo-young is like, and Woo is like, get off of me.
She's spinning around.
Yeah, she'll be like a running back in football, just like trying to juke and chuck and jive away from her.
And
but
she crosses paths with
with who?
her mom.
The other lawyer from Taesan.
I don't remember when this scene happened, but there's a scene of her and Choi sitting on a bench. I think it's Choi. And she's talking, and that's like the name of the episode, If I Were a Whale.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Would my mother have stayed with me? Because she talks about these
whales, how the mothers, then
stay with even when one of the babies are trapped.
Right, and then they'll sacrifice their own lives.
She stays anyway.
Wow.
And that was just a deep thought.
That's what you did.
I remember thinking, that's something really heavy to just spring on your coworker like that.
But she doesn't even think about it that way, right? She's like, we're just talking.
If I was trying to be like, whoa, where'd this come from?
You can see her look at her like that too. Like, she's like, if I were a whale, would my mother stay with me? And I was like, Jesus Christ. That's why, I'm so glad you said that. The title of the episode.
And then the whole episode, because the other guy the litigator likes the one that
is he doing it again?
I don't know. I was laughing at your face because I thought you heard Nico.
I do hear Nico. Go ahead.
But they never do it again. Other than them saying, okay, he likes this girl, but we're like, no, he likes Woo. But they never
come back to it.
Okay.
But thank you. I'm sorry. I owe you an apology because we forgot to talk about the basketball scene.
Oh yeah.
Because he gets a call from the client, I think, and he's like, "Well, yeah, I have to do because she has disability." I mean, like he was such a dick, basically throwing Woo under the bus, and Junho heard that, and then he just like, we're almost done. He like plays rough with him, and then Quan, a couple of times, and Quan's like, "Hey, play fair," and he's like, "Play fair? You're one to talk," and just walks off. All right, so that was it. Those were the 2 episodes. Still loving it.
Yeah.
Still enjoying it.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay.
How many more episodes do you have left?
It's 16 total.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
We're like
We're going to
halfway.
watch 7 and 8 later today.
Oh, it feels like it's been more than that.
Because they're long and there's so much happens. So anyway, we gotta go let our dog out because he's losing his shit. But thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back next week with more 이상한 변호사 우영우. Bye.